Hello.
Hey,
So we're going to tell you a little bit about our day.
we enjoyed a more relaxed start than usual. We got to sleep in a bit, and Hyacinth and I woke up early and prepared breakfast,
Which was delicious.
It was delicious. And then we headed on over to the local river passing through our campsite to go for a quick dip before we hopped on our bus.
Not everyone swam. I unfortunately did not get to swim, but Richard had been raving all morning that he had had the opportunity to go for an early morning swim that he really enjoyed. And so some of us went for a quick dip to cool off and to wash off a little bit in the river.
Yeah.
And we learned that the river that we were swimming in was called the Merced River. That was actually going to flow into the San Joaquin River, which was cool because we had learned a little bit about the San Joaquin River and the Sacramento River the day before when we were at the pumping station.
Yeah, so I did swim in the river. I highly enjoyed it. Cold at first, but it was really refreshing and a really nice way to start out the day, actually. But for future Cal studiers, be aware that there is actually a rope swing right at the swimming hole that is like slightly hidden, but you should definitely take advantage of that when you or if you return to that river. Because we did not, but we all really wanted to. So
yeah, there was a lot of
facts for the future.
A lot of people desperately begging Richard to go for it, but we were unfortunately out of time at the campsite. So we hopped on the bus for about 2 hours to drive to Hayward from our campsite, which was where we were meeting our speakers. And we had a nice, fun time with DJ Hyacinth, playing some tunes from the past, which was definitely a good time.
Yeah. There were some tunes, some goofing around, but there was also, definitely some more intellectual talking going on as well, because we drove past the Altamont landfill, and Richard actually knows a fair bit about it, so he was talking to us about the landfill, which is where San Francisco's trash goes, and telling us that about how San Francisco's like huge push for increased recycling is largely generated by just running out of space in the landfill. So pushed by necessity rather than, maybe altruism.
Yeah.
I don't know. I found that really interesting.
Yeah, it was also we were driving by it, so he actually pointed out where the landfill specifically was, and what actually looked like mountains in some way were actually the piles of trash, which was really saddening because I've seen photos of other landfills where you think it's like snow-capped and it's actually just like the trash rotting. And so that was really fascinating to me because I've always known that San Francisco has such a big focus on recycling. And obviously that's not just like because there's no space, obviously, and recycling is very important, but I thought that was extremely fascinating as well. So then when we arrived at the Hayward Airport, we were greeted by two urban alums, Jared and Jeremy, who graduated in the class of 1999. And they were actually in Cal Studies when they were here at Urban, which was nice to know. And their focus was forestry. So they told us a little bit about their experience in Cal Studies when they went here.
Yeah, that's another thing that I really enjoyed about Cal Studies, or I guess kind of like a side perk. Just like seeing how, I don't know, just seeing all of these like urban connections with like, we keep talking to urban alums and I don't know, just seeing like where they've gone since urban and just like how, widely cast the urban net is. I don't know, that has been really interesting to me throughout the class. Jared mostly was talking to us about his job as a commercial pilot, and also just sort of the entire like airline industry, and like the different types of, like air travel, I guess.
We didn't really have a ton of time with them, so he sort of just gave us a broad overview of aviation in general. And so we started out talking about how he was saying how the airplane was the greatest invention with the car and the computer, and how the airplane has literally changed everything and the entire perspective on the world because of flying. It makes travel so much easier and therefore makes the world seem so much smaller, which is definitely very true. And he talked a little bit about the world's longest flight is from Newark to Singapore, and it's a total of 9,500 miles, and it's about 16 to 17 hours. And so if you're traveling the longest distance in the world, it's not even a full day. Whereas obviously, before airplanes were invented, traveling that distance would have taken so much more time, not less than a day. So that's pretty incredible to think about.
Yeah, for sure. That definitely stood out to me as well. And just sort of like this whole idea of, I don't know, importance or like potential of transportation to sort of like, I don't know, connect the world in this like much more intimate way, has sort of been a theme throughout the class, I would say. It is a class about transportation, so obviously, it's going to portray transportation as important. But I remember like one of our other speakers, Aegon Turplan, who was with the local organization Spur. He was also sort of talking about the capability of transportation systems to, make places that, were farther away feel closer and like connect people, and sort of, I guess, like the other positive implications of doing that. In his case, he was talking about high-speed rail in particular. But yeah, it's interesting how, all types of transportation really do that. And like, I don't know, I think that's like one of the, that's like why it's important, I guess.
Yeah. Just this idea that transportation connects people is cool. What else? Should we talk about the different types of aviation?
Yeah, sure. There were a lot of different types of aviation.
Yeah.
You just kept rattling off that list, and it was just
definitely more than I'd ever thought about. I mean, there's obviously
sure.
the ones that you think about, like commercial travel. So like the flying actual people to locations, like the ones that we're used to, and that was specifically called. That's just the movement of people. So the big airlines such as American Airlines, United, and then there's the smaller versions of that, which were JetBlue, which are called national airlines. And then there's the regional airlines, which are the smaller planes, so maybe ones that you personally want to fly.
Recreational use.
That's the word he used. And then there's charter airlines, which are planes that you can actually like hire out, and they have like a pilot, obviously, and people who work on that plane, but it's not your plane. You just buy it for however much time you need. Then there was air ambulances, which don't really need any explanation. So mainly flying is for like movement of cargo, movement of people, recreational, and then there's training airplanes. So actually, Jared himself he also works as a teacher at the Hayward Executive Airport. So we actually later on the tour got to see some of the actual airplanes that he uses to train future pilots, which was really cool. Because we actually saw, I personally, when I learned to drive, my driving instructor had pedals that he could use, and also on the training plane, there was also like all of the stuff that the teacher could use to take over if the student needed the assistance, which was cool.
Yeah, another point that he brought up that I found really interesting was he said that 99% of the time, the pilots in planes aren't actively flying the plane, and that it's the plane is on autopilot. So I don't know. I guess I find that really interesting. Sort of I don't know. It seems like maybe that's sort of the direction that a lot of our transportation is moving towards, this like less manually controlled activity, as opposed to sort of like, I don't know, maybe more of a passive experience.
It sort of connects to the driverless car,
Mm-hmm.
which we're going to see later next week. We're going to learn about that. We're not going to see the car, but we'll learn about it. And those definitely directly relate to each other. So sort of just this idea that we're definitely progressing towards this more like laid back mode of transportation, which is really cool, but it's also in a way sort of scary to imagine.
Yeah, and pretty abstract.
Yeah. It's hard to sort of wrap your mind around it.
Yeah.
And then we got to go up into the air traffic control tower, which was cool because definitely those are things that you see at every airport and sort of wonder what's going on in there. This was a much smaller airport, so the guys in there weren't as probably busy as the people in the air traffic control tower at, say, SFO or Oakland Airport.
Yeah, it was very laid back.
Yeah.
I was very surprised
Yeah.
At just how relaxed the atmosphere was.
Yeah.
You know, I guess, they don't get very much air traffic in
Yeah.
Hayward, but,
It's pretty funny. They actually threw water balloons at us
Yep.
as we were leaving at our little urban school bus, which was pretty funny.
Yep.
But it was actually cool. They have these monitors. All of the technology they had looked pretty outdated. But I mean, it's understandable for a very small airport. They don't have the resources to purchase all of the newest technology. But it's cool because we learned that there are these regions that each airport has, even like the smallest of airports, like even airports that are smaller than the Hayward Airport. And every time a plane flies into those regions, they have to contact the air traffic control tower in that region. But oftentimes there are pilots who are used to flying, say, from Sacramento to San Francisco, and so they're used to calling the air traffic control towers that are on that route. But oftentimes when they're going somewhere else that they're not used to going, they just don't realize that those other towers are there, so they just don't call, and that sort of causes stress for the people in the air traffic control towers. So that was cool to know that all of the regions are actually divided up, so that you will never really be in a situation where you're not contacting someone, which actually sounds a bit tedious for the pilots, because you would think that they would want to be focusing on flying, but I guess if there's autopilot, that also takes the focus away from actually flying, which was cool.
Yeah.
What else? I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
All right.
that's pretty much it. Well, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah.
That
was our day.
That was our day. It was a great way to end a fabulous trip. So tune in later for more of our videos and for the rest of the blog posts from the rest of our Cal Studies classmates. So have a great day. Bye.
Bye.